All right, we're going to look at the next day, which is the second day on classifying quadrilaterals. Today we're going to add rhombi, square, and kite to the quadrilaterals that we already know. There's this really cool visual that I think would make for a really cool anchor chart. We've already talked about quadrilaterals, trapezoids, parallelograms, and rectangles. Today what we're going to be adding is squares, rhombuses, and kites. What I think is really cool about this visual is that we can see that kites could be parallelograms, they could be trapezoids, they could be rectangles, but then you're also going to see some kites that are not parallelograms, trapezoids, rectangles, rhombuses. So like this kite spans all of these classifications while still in quadrilaterals. We start again with this definition. This is review from the previous day. We see that our flow chart here has grown a little bit, right? Yesterday we just had quadrilaterals, trapezoids, parallelograms, and rectangles. Today I'm adding kite, rhombus, and square. These were all of our definitions, the exact wording that kids put in their notes yesterday. Today I'm going to add kite, rhombus, and square. So a kite is a quadrilateral with two congruent sides, two pairs of congruent sides, sorry. So we can show that this side is congruent to this side and this side is congruent to this side, okay? Kites don't necessarily have to be parallelograms, but they could be. If you have a rhombus that is a kite, okay, so like a rhombus is a kite, it is also a parallelogram. Right? So if you have a kite that also happens to be a rhombus, then we can classify a kite as a parallelogram. But if you have a kite that looks like this one that does not have the attributes of a rhombus, then we can't classify it as a parallelogram. Okay, so let's look at what the classifications or the attributes of a rhombus are. First, we want to say rhombus. The plural is rhombi, so that kids don't get confused with making that word plural, is a parallelogram that has four congruent sides. So here we'll show with tick marks that we have four congruent sides. Yesterday, we talked about how parallelograms have diagonals that bisect each other. Here, these not only bisect each other, but they also are perpendicular, meaning that they have 90-degree angles. Okay, and then also a square. You can see that in the square, all four sides are congruent. We have four right angles, and we have perpendicular diagonals, right? So a square will have all the attributes of a rectangle and all of the attributes of a rhombus. So a square is a rhombus, it's a kite, it's a quadrilateral, it's also a rhombus, a parallelogram, a trapezoid, a quadrilateral. It's also a rectangle, a parallelogram, a trapezoid, a quadrilateral. So whenever we have a square, that means we have all the attributes of all of these shapes. All right, we have a classifying, like a bucketing practice here, where we identify that there are some figures like F and J that are not quadrilaterals. There are other figures like G that are only a quadrilateral. They don't meet the classification of a trapezoid because we don't have at least one pair of parallel sides. Then we have all these parallelograms that are not only trapezoids, but they are also having two pairs of parallel sides. Then we have some that are rectangles and some that are just squares, right? So then we ask this question: did any figures fit into all the categories? If so, why? I've also added some other questions that you can ask that we just want students like conversing about that make for really good think pair shares. For instance, like which of these could we classify, which of these could we classify as rhombi, and are like of those which are not rectangles, and why? And then it's like a turn and talk. Then we have two other practice problems. One very similar to the work that we've done for the last 2 days. State whether or not this is true or false and explain your reasoning. And then this one. This is multiple select, and then which answers did you not select? Explain why you didn't select those answers. And then the practice problems look very similar to what we just did here in practice 2 and 3.